Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you do not miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS.
Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice, where we take up the questions from the Hindu and Indian Express and curate them as per the demands of Civil Services Prelims examination. The questions for the discussion are listed on your screen. Moving to the first article that has featured in the Hindu, basically talks about the Tanzanian lake which is in news due to an air crash that has happened recently. Now UPSC in the previous year has also asked questions related to various seas, oceans and various lakes and other important places that were in the news recently or in that year. And such a question was also seen in the year 2018. The practice question in this regard says, with reference to Lake Victoria, consider the following statement. The first statement here is, it is the world's largest tropical lake. Now this statement is correct. Moving on to the second statement, it says it is saline in nature. Now this statement is incorrect, as Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. Moving on to the third statement, it says the boundary of Lake Victoria is shared with Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. Now this statement is again correct, as Lake Victoria shares the border with Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. The practice question further says, select the correct answer using the code given below. And as only statement 1 and 3 are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option C. Moving on to the previous year question, the correct code for the previous year question is option A. Moving on to the next article that has featured in the Hindu, talks about Indian black honeybee that is found recently in Western Ghats. Now UPSC under the environment section has asked questions related to various species that have been recently discovered along with their scientific name. And such a question was seen in the year 2018 where UPSC asked about the plant. So this area becomes important for us. The practice question says Apis carinjordian was in news recently, and as we have seen, it is a new species of honeybee that have been discovered. Going a little deeper, the new species of endemic honeybee has been discovered in the Western Ghats. The new species have been named Apis carinjordian and given the common name Indian black honeybee. The last honeybee which was discovered in India was Apis indica in 1798. Apis carinjordian has evolved from Apis carina and has acclimatized to the hot and humid environment of the Western Ghats. The distribution of this honeybee ranges from central Western Ghats, Nilgiris to the southern Western Ghats covering states of Goa, Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Moving to the previous year question, the correct answer for the previous year question is option B. Moving on to the next article that has featured in the Hindu basically talks about the currency usage which is still dominant and robust even after 6 years of demonetization. Further, the currency usage has increased by more than 70% recently. Now UPSC in the previous year has also asked questions related to currency, their demand and their net impact on the economy, and such a question was seen in the year 2020. A practice question in this regard thus becomes important from the perspective of prelims. The practice question says, consider the following statements regarding monetary aggregate. The first statement here is, M0 is the sum of currency in circulation, bankers deposit with RBI and others deposit with the RBI. Now this statement is correct, as M0 is the sum currency in circulation plus bankers deposit with the RBI and also other deposits with the RBI. Now here a thing to understand is the term other deposits. The other deposits with the RBI comprise mainly of deposits of quasi government and other financial institutions including primary dealers. Secondly, balances in the accounts of foreign central banks and the governments. And thirdly, accounts of international agencies such as IMF, etc. Moving on to the second statement, it says M3 captures the complete balance sheet of the banking sector. Now this statement is also correct. But to understand the concept behind this statement, we have to first understand what is M3, and to understand M3, we have to understand what is M2. Now M2 is nothing but sum of M1, that is sum of currency in circulation, bankers deposit with RBI, other deposit with RBI, and along with that sum of time liabilities portion of saving deposit with the banking system, certificate of deposits that have been issued by the banks, term deposits of residents with a contractual maturity up to and including 1 year with the banking system. This was the definition for M2. M3 on the other hand includes M2 plus term deposits of residents with a contractual maturity over 1 year with the banking system, call and term borrowing from non-depository financial corporation by the banking systems also. Thus, it is the M3 which captures the complete balance sheet of the banking sector. The third statement here says M0 reflects obligation of commercial banks including current accounts and the saving accounts. Now this statement is incorrect because as we have seen the definition of M3. M0 is the obligation of a central bank which includes the currency and the central bank depository accounts, while the M1 and M3 reflects the obligation of commercial banks which includes current accounts and saving accounts. The question further says choose the correct code, and as only statement 1 and 2 are correct, the correct code for the given question will be option A. The answer for the previous year question is option D. Moving on to the next article that has featured in the Indian Express basically talks about the malaria vaccine. Now malaria vaccine has been approved by WHO in October 2021 last year. UPSC in the previous year has also asked questions related to various diseases, viral load and bacterial infections that were in the news that year. And such a question was seen in the year 2017 when UPSC asked about the Zika virus disease. So this area becomes important from the perspective of prelims. The practice question in this regard says, consider the following statements. The first statement here is, malaria and dengue both are transmitted by the bite of Aedes aegypti mosquito. Now this statement is incorrect, as malaria is transmitted through the bite of female Anopheles mosquito, and only the bite from this species of mosquito can spread the fever in contrast to dengue. The Anopheles mosquito is active during the night time. Dengue on the other hand is transmitted by Aedes aegypti mosquito bite. Aedes aegypti mosquito usually bites during the daytime. Further, the bite can also spread if another uninfected mosquito bites the infected person and then spread it to the other people. Going a little further, Aedes aegypti is also responsible for the transmission of yellow fever, chikungunya and Zika virus. Moving on to the second statement, it says the bites are the only known mode of transmission of malaria and dengue. Now this statement is again incorrect. The bite from Aedes aegypti mosquito is the only known mode of transmission for the dengue disease. However, the transmission of malaria can also take place from the infected needle and transfusion process also. Moving on to the third statement, it says Mosquirix is the approved vaccine available for both the malaria and dengue. Now this statement is again incorrect, as there are no vaccines that are available for dengue. RTS, branded as Mosquirix, is the vaccine that has passed the lengthy scientific trials and has been found safe in reducing the risk of malaria by approximately 40%, which is the best regarded in this regard. The question further says choose the correct code, and as none of the statement given above is correct, the correct option will be option D. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option C. Moving on to the next article that has featured in the Indian Express basically talks about the foreign portfolio investors who have become the net buyers and have invested nearly 15,000 crore rupees in the first week of November. Now this comes at a time where FPIs were withdrawing in large amounts owing to the Ukrainian and the Russian war. Now UPSC has previously also asked questions related to FDI and FPI as a mode of investment in India, and this was also seen in the year 2020. So this area becomes important from the perspective of prelims. The practice question in this regard says, consider the following statement. The first statement here is, unlike FPI, FDI investors have no control over ventures or direct ownership of property or a stake in a company. Now this statement is incorrect because unlike FDI, FPI consists of passive ownership. Investors have no control over ventures or direct ownership of the property or a stake in the company. FPI with portfolio investment in general is an investor who does not actively manage the investment or the companies that issues the investment. FPIs do not have direct control over the assets or the business. In contrast, the FDI lets an investor purchase a direct business interest in the foreign country. FDI investor controls the monetary investment and often actively manages the company into which they put the money. Moving on to the second statement, it says FDI is more liquid than FPI and offers the investor a chance for a quicker return on his money. Now, this statement is again incorrect, and if we can look closely, it is a definition of FPI. Because in the case of FDI, the investor's money is tied up in a company. They face less liquidity and more risk. The investor also faces currency exchange risks, which may decrease the value of investment when converted from the country's currency to the home currency. FDI also involves an additional risk, that is political risk, which may make the foreign economy and his investment shaky. The FPI investment, that is the foreign portfolio investment, on the other hand, are financial assets and not the property or a direct stake in the company, and hence they are inherently more marketable. FPI, that is foreign portfolio investment, is thus more liquid than FDI and offers the investors a chance for a quicker return on his money and even a quicker exit from the same. The practice question further says which of the statement given above is or are correct, and as none of the statement given above is correct, the correct code for the given question is option D. Further, the correct code for the previous year question is option B. Moving to the last question of the day that has featured in the Indian Express, basically talks about the First Amendment to the Indian Constitutions and the imposition of restrictions on the fundamental rights. Now, fundamental rights has been a pet subject for UPSC under the polity section, and it has continuously asked questions related to them in the previous year. A practice question in this regard regarding the fundamental rights and their amendability can be framed. The practice question here says, consider the following statement with respect to Article 19(2) of Constitution of India. The first statement here is, the Constitution 16th Amendment Act 1963 added the term reasonable before restriction and also added public order as a ground to restrict the fundamental rights. Now, this statement is incorrect as it was the First Amendment which added the term reasonable and public order to restrict the exercise of fundamental rights. Moving on to the second statement, it says reasonable restrictions in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India was added to Article 19(2) through the Constitution First Amendment Act 1951. Now, this statement is again incorrect as it was the 16th Amendment which provided restrictions on the exercise of fundamental rights in the interest of sovereignty and integrity. The question further says which of the statement given above is or are correct, and as none of the statement given above is correct, the correct answer for the given question will be option D. Going a little deeper and enriching ourselves with the knowledge, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act removed Article 19(1)(f) which provided for the property, and it was the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act which provided for the inclusion of cooperative society under the same, that is Article 90. So these were the questions for the day. Stay tuned for more such updates.